Howdy, Crystal Conclave. It's NESHY, and today I've got a very special episode with you. Special guest Ryan Levine. If you don't know him, he's a very decorated Yu-Gi-Oh player with multiple premier YCS tops. And for those of you who don't know, he is the co-creator to Conclave Control. I want to show you guys this take that we had on Crystal Beast. I think you'll like it a lot.
I would argue he's advanced Crystal Beast more than anyone else has ever done in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh!
So back in 2020, he and I created the deck. And the idea behind it was, instead of playing the Bricky Beast, you play non-engine instead for more consistency. So, while it is more consistent, you do miss out on summoning Rainbow Dragon. So, if that's not your cup of tea, I don't blame you. Go ahead and hop into it and learn from the wealth of knowledge that is Ryan Levine. I'll have to catch him up to speed on modern Conclave Control a little bit, but it's going to be great for the current Age of Overlord format. Let's do this. I was thinking we can talk about AGOV format, and then if we have time, maybe we can get into Master Duel a little bit.
Whichever one.
I want to say first off, happy birthday! It was your birthday yesterday.
Thank you.
That's awesome, and you spent it on a plane. How was the YCS for you?
It was. I actually, a lot of my opponents were just not very pleasant. So unfortunately, it was somewhat more, more negative than usual, but the actual event was fine. Like, I had a good trip, but the actual playing, just like a lot of my opponents were just not fun to interact with. But
yeah, I hear
that'll happen sometimes. I played Rescue Ace. It's whatever. It doesn't. It's
in the moment it didn't feel good.
Yeah.
Well, sir, I want to ask you, as the co-creator of Conclave Control, this is our baby from back in 2020. How familiar are you with modern Conclave Control?
I honestly do not know the entire extent of what Golden Rule lets you end on. Even though it is still basically Conclave Control, it looks like you're shifting more towards the counter trap than Conclave specifically, which is also reasonable, because that card is also very good. And it is sort of unfortunate that I think maybe the best Crystal Beast cards are the traps and kind of compete with each other for what like for that instance. And I don't know. I was thinking, I hadn't thought about Crystal Beast in a while, and then I thought about them literally 2 days ago when the Centurions got revealed. Somebody said, "Did you look at this? You can probably use them in Crystal Beast." And I read all of them, and I was like, "None of these have any synergy with Crystal Beast." What are you talking about?
There is a one-card combo because you could search the field spell, but that's about it.
Yeah, I was reading them, and I was all like, "None of these have anything to do with the similarity ends with they go in the spell and trap zone."
Yeah,
like that was it. But
people said that about Sinful Spoils too. And Valence.
Oh yeah, we're like Flameberg Valence, I'll give him a little bit benefit of a doubt, where the field spell can actually do something.
Yeah, it's like Crystal Promise at home.
Actually, yeah, which is searchable off of Rainbow Bridge, which is fine, like, I guess. But I saw in Phantom Nightmare there's that new Synchro monster, and it can trigger even I'm not sure if you've seen it, but it's the level 8 Synchro monster, and it says when it's Synchro summoned or when it's sent to the graveyard, you can discard a card and then target a monster in your graveyard and put it in your spell and trap card zone as a continuous trap. If it is in the spell and trap card zone, it says, so basically what you would do in my theoretical, how would this work with Crystal Beast, is you would Nadir Servant to send it, or Punishment to send it, and it can put itself in the spell and trap card zone, and it has an effect when it's in the spell and trap card zone, and it says during either player's turn, if this card is a continuous trap in your spell and trap card zone, you can special summon a monster being treated as a spell or trap. So you can actually summon Pegasus or Ruby or something from your spell and trap card zone on your opponent's turn. Which would then trigger Pegasus to then put something in the spell and trap card zone, which would then trigger Rainbow Bridge of the Heart's ability to actually bounce something. Which I don't know if you actually have enough back row space for that to be feasible, especially because if you're doing it with Nadir Servant, that implies Ecclesia is involved, which implies you're also setting punishment. So I don't know what like back row setup you're working with. I guess it's a Miracle, a Rainbow Bridge of the Heart, a Pegasus, that guy, and a Punishment, I guess.
Yeah. So
is all 5 of your back row. And like that's kind of fun, but
Yeah.
I don't know, how, or if there are any tuners that can just be used in this deck naturally to just make that card. Like maybe that can do something too, but
I can kind of explain it. Golden Rule, first off, is more just like a bomb card. Think of it like Sprite Gamma Burst. Like this is just used for OTKs, especially through Droll. You don't want to use it turn 1 unless you're trying to push to absolutely Dagara's Pitch Salvation for draws. If Pegasus or Zenith gets negated. But yeah, Golden Rule is really just for Ruby OTKs, the Ruby Rampage. Conclave is down to 1 because of how great Awakening is. Awakening just special summons from anywhere, searches for any bridge card, does your laundry, does your taxes. And the great thing is it can act as Conclave during your opponent's turn, if like Conclave at home, where you just Awakening someone Pegasus, crystallize, trigger heart to bounce. So it's basically Conclave at home, and that's why Triple Awakening is so nice. Although it can get bricky because you do need Rainbow Dragon in hand to enable it. So if Zenith gets negated, that kind of sucks. I think it's more than worth it. I think at this point, Fenrir is a core card, so I organize this deck in terms of core cards, and then the 6 cards at the end are just non-engine that you could side out. But I think at this point, Fenrir, with it being searchable off Raitsoth, it has to be considered a core card, right?
Yeah, if that's your main application of Rainbow Bridge with goods, then I'd probably say, because you could do Necro Valley, like that's an option that's in your main deck, obviously, but if I had to, just from looking at it, when you're just blind activating Foolish Burial Goods, you're just summoning Fenrir, searching a Fenrir, and then getting a Pegasus.
Yeah.
And just playing from there.
It has a lot more application going second than... Necro Valley is amazing going first and second, but decks like Flu, obviously you can just search Raitsoth going second, and that's a lot more impactful than a Necro Valley.
Yeah.
And Rescue Ace as well. I think Fenrir's a little better against Rescue Ace than Necro Valley is.
It basically demands that you use a trap on it, which is relevant for this instance. Fenrir also threatens IP and SP really well right now.
Yes.
Which matters a little bit more in decks where you have like a heavy hand trap count. So you're hand trapping them, and then all they're ending on is SP, and then you just go Fenrir attack, and then that's kind of how you get back into the game. But it is still relevant in that if you just go sometimes just a Pegasus might not do that much into SP.
Yeah.
if it's your only play, and Fenrir can definitely help. Is there a specific reason why it's only 2 Fenrir, not 3?
That's just to reduce diminishing returns. It used to be that you play 3 because Fenrir was a lot more respected, where once it hits the field, people would wipe it out immediately and you could punish them with a second Fenrir in hand, but I've noticed people don't do that anymore. They kind of just let the Fenrir go and deal with it later, is what I've found. So having more than 1 Fenrir in hand isn't as valuable from what I've found as it used to be. So I'd rather just see less, if you know what I mean.
Which, I guess you're kind of just playing 5 Fenrirs anyway, if you look at it from the goods and planet perspective anyway. So you're playing, you'll see it more often than not.
Yeah. Or I've Awakening Pitch Salvation to search Raitsoth and Fenrir.
That too.
You could really get super desperate with it.
Yeah.
But the main thing that I wanted to discuss here was the non-engine. So, obviously we're playing... The only hand trap here is Shifter, and then we have Book of Moon and Talents, because if I sent you a matchup chart, but basically Pearly is our hardest matchup. It's very difficult to beat Pearly going second. Obviously going first you can Necro Valley and Baguska and you're looking pretty good, but everything else, like going second, it's definitely Pearly is the hardest matchup. The book is there, as well as Spellbound for going second against them. I was debating between Spellbound and Xyz Encore, but I found Spellbound works really nicely against Chimera because Guardian Chimera is very, very threatening during our turn, and I like the ability to turn off Guardian Chimera because that's the only scary thing about Chimera for the Conclave Control deck is the Guardian Chimera. That card is very spooky. Spellbound just puts in a lot of work for that. But what are your thoughts on Spellbound versus Xyz Encore?
I think it depends on the matchup spread. Like, so Spellbound is a card that I think generally in a lot of the situations there are better applications. Like there are better cards than Spellbound. However, its advantage comes when it can cover multiple decks, right? Because that's the main issue, is that you only have 15 side deck slots.
Yeah.
So in a situation where the format is not very wide, I think Spellbound generally is not going to be a good card, because you have the luxury of really pinning down what decks you need to be and what decks you can afford to side more specific cards for. Right now, I don't think that luxury really exists. In this chart, you have 9 decks listed, and I think all of these decks are reasonable to play against. I think it's funny that of the 9 decks, which are Pearly, Flunder, Sprite, Manatium, Rescue Ace, Labyrinth, Tier, Chimera, I'm gonna just group like Branded in that too, and Unchained. I think it's funny. I think Sprite is the least relevant of these 9 decks.
I agree. Hilarious. I just kind of threw it there because I wanted to put something else in disadvantage.
That there are like that many decks, and I think Spellbound covers specifically Pearly and Flunder.
Yes.
Reasonably well, which you both have as which look like your 2 hardest matchups. So it seems very reasonable to put Spellbound instead of Xyz Encore, because like realistically, Spellbound isn't that much worse than Xyz Encore for your purpose of playing against Pearly, and obviously Xyz Encore has no effect against Flunder, and Spellbound, will be like a pretty reasonable card. So
they have to have specifically 4 birds in hand.
Yeah, so I can definitely see the merit of it here. And that's kind of where a card like Spellbound shines, is just like situations like that.
I agree. The Pearly gets 2 more draws off Sleepy, but that's about it. The other thing I wanted to mention, how I organize the matchup chart with disadvantage, even advantage, that's depending on the amount of cards that I find myself siding in and out. If I side out a ton of cards, if I have to sideboard in a lot of cards, then that means it's a disadvantage for me. And then if I don't have to really side in anything, then that's a huge advantage. The deck just inherently has a great matchup. Even is siding a moderate amount.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's a good way to look at it, because like I think a lot of people will sometimes side. They're like, something that I think people a trap they fall into is definitely like oversiding, where they put a card in their side deck for a matchup that their deck actually just does pretty well against, right? And they really don't need to do a whole lot. Like some in matchups where you're actually doing pretty well and could argue to be even favored, you might even consider siding cards that counter the side cards you're expecting to be played against you.
Exactly.
This is a rogue deck, so I don't really think there's a world where you're expecting certain side cards to be put in against you. So that, that strategy doesn't quite I don't know what the counter Crystal Beast side would be. Like that, I don't know what that would be, but that is something that I think kind of a trap people fall into, is they side for matchups they don't, or they side too much for matchups they don't need to, just because the deck is popular. And it's like, well, if you actually have a good matchup against a popular deck, that's an advantage, because then you get to use your side deck on the matchups
exactly.
On the more obscure matchups that you actually have a hard time playing.
So. I think you raise a good point, because when I'm playing against a matchup that I have a good advantage against, like let's say Tier, if I have Necro Valley up, I'm not going to use my Miracle Negate on a Sheer, and I'm going to use it on a Heartbeat or a side deck card like Cosmic.
Yeah. And that's also another advantage of something like this, where you can easily establish hard negations like the counter trap, and then protect your Dweller, or protect, because
it's really just protect the castle.
Because most of the tier decks are playing cards. That sort of tried to get around Dweller.
Yeah.
Which I guess you can't counter trap Xyz Encore because it can't be chained to, but you can counter trap drop unless it's card a trap, which is not impossible, but less likely, I would say, than than most other outcomes.
Yeah, I'll only go for Dweller if I don't already have Shifter or Necro Valley up to is the other thing.
Yeah.
It's like very hard to counterplay against. Dweller's like the last resort because monsters for some reason just have the most counterplay. We don't have like a Kaiju for back rows or Red Reboot, right?
Yeah.
That
it is tough to get through counter traps.
Since this is a rogue deck, like I understand all these other decks have a stronger engine than this one does.
Mhm.
It's just more consistent, more powerful. So that's why we need Floodgates to win as a rogue deck. That's just the hard truth in the Yu-Gi-Oh world. So it just breaks down to which deck do I Baguska versus which deck do I Necro Valley. Which deck do I Dweller versus which deck do I just search Fenrir.
Yeah. Like if you're playing, and not saying if you're playing a rogue deck, I think it's also important to understand what your gimmick is. And I don't necessarily mean gimmick in a derogatory manner, but just what is the thing that your deck does that other decks can't do.
Yeah.
And I actually think
you're absolutely right.
Rainbow Bridge of Salvation is a pretty strong gimmick as far as some of what these rogue decks can do, which is that essentially, right, you have to put, obviously you don't really want to draw a Rainbow Bridge of Salvation, but in the scenario of I'm activating Foolish Burial Goods or I'm activating my engine and I'm, sending Rainbow Bridge of Salvation to the graveyard, you are activating your archetypal Rhoda that also searches a field spell.
Yes.
And your options are Necro Valley, a ridiculous Floodgate, or Wraithsoth to search Fenrir. And that is hilarious. Like, that is a very funny gimmick.
It is. It's 100% a gimmick.
Access to. And I think leaning into it makes a lot of sense, right? And it's like, this is something that other decks cannot do, and that other decks decks jump through ridiculous hoops to play weird field spells and summon Ancient Fairy Dragon to get more access to the field spells that they want to use. And the fact that you can just play a card like Good, send this, and get your field spell and your
the best monster in the deck.
Archetypal normal summon, is definitely something worth just running with. I guess one thing that a question I had originally that I forgot until just now, is there a reason why the Crystal Beast Rainbow Dragon is a 3 of now instead of a 2 of?
Yeah.
It's summon up, right? It's summon up Golden Rule, right?
Exactly. It's just for Golden Rule OTKs. Yeah. I do want to talk about maybe playing the Draglubion package. That's something I'm playing right now in Master Duel. Just the Draglubion, Numeron Dragon, Hope Harbinger. But ever since Little Knight came out, now we need to play IP and then the Typhon as well. So those 3 cards were added now instead of the Draglubion. So I'm wondering if we cut more cards for that OTK, because it is nice to have, but obviously it's not necessary, or if the toolbox option with Little Knight is just way better. I mean, obviously we keep Little Knight, right? But we really need
really strong. I think it's funny. I was looking at this extra deck and I literally was like, why isn't Dryden in here? And then remembered it was just banned in TCG.
Yeah. We played in Master Duel.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I was just like, it was like it's missing something. No, that's for Zeus. I was like, right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how often this deck really can go into Goddess. Like, I feel like this deck just plays so few monsters that I think something crazy has to have happened for you to be able to Goddess against Pearly. Like, that just seems, and I also feel like,
Goddess never comes
I feel
up
like
against Pearly. We'd rather just try and go Baguska, because it's still affected by continuous effects.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. It's like Goddess seems like a card you could remove. Like, Azalea seems much less relevant now that you have Little Knight, especially because Pegasus is a wind and Fenrir is an earth. So Azalea isn't even the easiest thing to make in the world. Those are the 2 that kind of jump out at me of like, that maybe you don't need those. Like, especially now that SP covers the space that I feel like Azalea did. In that it was just the most generic removal available. Now you sort of have more generic removal, even more generic removal.
That's fair.
covers all these things. And the restriction of SP, if you make it with a link to banish something, of not being able to attack directly for the rest of this turn, definitely does not hurt a slower deck like this nearly as much.
Yeah.
And you are using it for just the utility of the removal, and you probably weren't producing 8,000 damage anyway. So it's okay to not, it's okay to remove a problem card and then not just, and you're missing 1,800 direct damage, and that's fine. Like, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Now that makes sense. Underworld definitely, the only towers monsters is Noir, and we'd rather not go into Underworld against that. It is very expensive. Yeah. You're absolutely right. Azalea was nice because it is removal turn after turn, because we have a ton of spells engraved that we otherwise don't have, we can't take advantage of, so we just turn them into advantage by battling. But of course, SP does that too without having the graveyard set up. The only thing, it doesn't interact with back row, but that's fine. It dodges back row, so that's neat. I think those are fine concessions. I think IP as well. It's still a little expensive. It is nice being able to go into Azalea, but what are your thoughts on Almirage? So with Golden Rule, the game plan is you want to have a Ruby in the grave for Golden Rule, and you want to have a Ruby in deck for a Conclave target or awakening someone from deck, or it can summon from grave. But it is nice having that Ruby in deck and then one in grave at all times. So what I'm thinking of is normal Ruby and then link into Almirage, the Golden Rule, and then that gives Little Knight extra value. I just keep thinking of ways that we can put link 1s on the field, because that just makes Little Knight insane.
Yes, I think Little Knight is at its best in decks that can reasonably produce Link 1 monsters, and that so you just get free value out of it. Because when Little Knight is made, when you have to make a Link 2 or an Exceeds monster to fulfill the requirement of Little Knight to get its bonus effect, and then you turn Little Knight essentially into a Link 3 monster, it almost seems fair, and we want to avoid that. We want our card to be as unfair as possible. So I definitely, that's because while I was looking at this, my thought process was, I wish there was level 1 monster that we could have Link Rebo for, or something, and I was even in the back of my head thinking like, I don't know, Clara and Rushka to turn Pegasus into it, but Almirage on Ruby is definitely a lot more reasonable of just something that you can just make a Link 1.
Yeah.
And if it has other application, like for Golden Rule, because you do want that in the graveyard, I could definitely see that being a very justifiable card to play. That seems very, very logical to put that in.
Wow,
and then that gives you a little bit more lead. Like, I don't know how many of the rank 4s you can conceivably cut. Like, I don't know if you can conceivably cut Tornado, Lighting Chidori, Cowboy, or any of those to make room for like Line of the Light Charmer, Hida, Selene, Access Code, something along those lines. I don't know how much space you really have for that. It doesn't seem necessary, but Almirage does give access to Hida, which is really good right now because of Rescue Ace being popular.
Yes.
And which then is Selene, and you actually, funnily enough, have Shifter for a spellcaster monster that you can bring back.
Yes, sir.
That you can bring back off of Selene, which is very funny as well. So again, probably not quite at that, probably not quite there yet, but something to consider.
I could see lineup for bringing back a Pearly or Manadium
for sure.
I'm down to talk about the side deck a little bit more. I know we talked about Spellbound. Wanted to see what you thought about like an extended thrust package. Evenly, I don't feel like it's very strong in this format. I don't know if you've been feeling the same way.
I don't think Evenly is strong. I don't generally think Evenly is strong.
Oh,
like I very frequently am. I don't want to say any format. There have definitely been times where Evenly has been good, but I think it's a card that people gravitate to more often than I think they should. Like, there are a lot of these backer decks historically that are very resilient, that people have sort of just said, oh, you evenly them and you win. And if you really like look at it further, if somebody is playing these decks at like a bit of a higher level with the expectation that, okay, Feather Duster and Lightning Storm and evenly matched exists, right? And like they should be played around or respected or at least like acknowledged in some aspect. Evenly generally ends up being one of the weaker ones.
Yeah.
And this is something like I use hyperbole a lot, but I think it makes my points stand out more, so I will continue to do it. A lot of the time, evenly is smashing ground that skips your battle phase. You evenly matched, and then your opponent negates it, and now you don't have a battle phase anymore. To the point that a card literally as bad as smashing ground would have done the same, but you don't skip your battle phase to do it. You know, so I understand that's a ludicrous hyperbolic example, but that is how I feel about that card a lot of the time, to be honest. Now, there are times when it can be very good. Like, it has never been better than when Card of Demise was a very popular card, because Card of Demise literally demands your opponent sets their entire hand. And then you evenly match them and they have nothing else, right? And like, that's how and that's just what that is.
We are also coming from a Spiral player.
Yes. Yeah. You know, but we are long past those days, and definitely there are times when evenly match can be strong. I'm not saying this card is never ever good. I'm sure everybody has evenly matched their opponent for 11 cards and felt insane. But I think it sort of has like the opposite confirmation bias cards like those, I think, where a lot of the times, you know, the confirmation bias is when like the outliers of a situation, you remember them because they're outliers, right? Where like you will brick one time in 10 games and you'll be like, man, I bricked on this card, like I'm gonna cut it, when it was good when you searched it the 9 games you didn't draw it and brick, right? And similarly, I think when people get the juicy evenly matched for 6 cards, they're like, evenly matched is crazy. I evenly matched my opponent for 6 cards. And then they sort of just, when it isn't good or like mid, or they use it and their opponent negates it and they go, you know, like main phase 2, like that's not what really sticks with them. They kind of like chase the high of evenly matched single-handedly winning them the game.
Technically it still applies because it's an outlier.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like they really focus on that, which, not to say that again, there's never time for evenly matched. I think right now specifically, evenly is worse than it has been for a long time. Because of how resilient a lot of the decks are. Specifically Tier and Rescue Ace. If they open with the Sinful Spoils and they did not preemptively shuffle back to draw a card, I will argue evenly met, like, when I was playing the Rescue Ace deck and I opened with Wanted to get the Die Bellstar, I did my whole thing and I had Turbulence and back row. I searched off Alert. I had Impulse in my hand. Like, I had like 4 cards in hand. I had the, 3 back row, SP, Turbulence. And then I had the Recursion in my graveyard. If my opponent said enter battle phase, it was Christmas. SP banish itself and my Turbulence until the end phase. Keep a back row. You don't have a battle phase. When I begin my turn, I draw for turn, search a level 1, draw an extra card. You cannot win.
Yeah, it's insane.
Like it felt like Christmas. So I didn't mean for this to be like, like evenly matched slander for 5 minutes, but now
you're absolutely spinning right now.
I do not think evenly matched is very good. I think it is worse than it has been, honestly, maybe ever, because Rescue Ace is extremely popular, and any ambiguity of Rescue Ace being the most popular deck has been evaporated after its performance at Indy. Rescue Ace was 12 out of 32 of the top cut at Indy, and the next most represented deck was 4. So Rescue Ace,
Rescue Ace
had a 3-to-1 ratio, literally Rescue Ace sweep. I think evenly, and despite what people will say, I think evenly is terrible against most Rescue Ace builds, and I would not recommend it.
Isn't it interesting that Rescue Ace just isn't anywhere on Dueling Book? The representation, I feel like, is so low. I feel like for this next YCSP, or for this next weekend of events, people are still going to not respect Rescue Ace.
It's definitely possible. I think if it has another breakout showing at Richmond, then I don't think anybody will call into question that Rescue Ace is the most popular deck. Even if you don't think it's the best deck, I think right now it has become more popular than Tier, which I think was the most popular deck.
Really?
Before.
You think it's more popular than Tier right now?
I'm pretty sure there were more Rescue Ace at Indy, but I don't remember. Definitely at the top cut level, definitely there were more
looking
Rescue
up
Ace
on
than Tier.
We're checking out YGeoScope right now. Let's put an end to this.
So YGeoScope, the reason right now I don't think it will reflect it is because Rescue Ace didn't get their support cards that made them good. They were good after Dune, but that didn't make them like top tier until 4 days ago. So
true. Yeah.
You're only gonna have a couple days of data of Rescue Ace, as opposed to Tier Element has been the most popular deck, I think, on Dueling Books since Dortmund. So that's why I think YGeoScope might not show the Rescue Ace sweep, but believe in me, I believe in Rescue Ace.
Oh, I believe.
It's also not just Rescue Ace specifically. I think SP Little Knight makes Evenly in general just weaker. I think it also makes Nibiru weaker. Anytime just an incidental SP Little Knight hits the field, your Nibiru now does not get rid of 2 of your opponent's monsters. SP Little Knight has great synergy with Baron, which is a card that is summoned in many different decks right now, where it can banish Baron temporarily, and then when Baron comes back, oh look, I haven't used it this time I've been on the field, and it can negate again. So definitely, Nibiru and Evenly are much less safe than they were. Not even to negation, just to SP Little Knight, like just dodging its effect, which I think is definitely something maybe people didn't respect as much at Indy.
Yeah, Little Knight makes Imperm weaker too.
Yes, that too. Yeah, it makes a yes.
And Nib.
I think Imperm is a card Imperm is a card I think you can feasibly activate before Little Knight is summoned a lot of the time. Definitely not all the time, but Nibiru, they had to summon 5 monsters, and probably Little Knight's going to be there.
Yeah, so it's
Little Knight's probably
middle or end
in
of the turn
at some point. Yeah.
Imperm could be early before the Little Knight. I get that.
Yeah. So I don't think you should put evenly match your deck for Thrust. You asked six minutes ago that I hate that.
Oh, of course. Unless I'm Calvin Tahan, of course. With the ABC evenly match sweep, right?
That is true. That you will never get negated ever.
Yeah, of course.
Thrust has a lot of good. You're playing 2 of the more reasonable options in the side already with Feather Duster and Herald of the Abyss.
Yeah.
And it can search your archetypal normal spells, which Crystal Beast actually has good ones. Nice. It has Crystal Bond and Rainbow Bridge, which searches your non-normal
search
ones.
Goods.
So. Yeah, or Search Goods as well. Yeah, which can get you a field spell, and it's better than Search Terraforming. Actually, you've already got Tactics in your main deck. As far as an expanded Thrust package, what would that even look like? I definitely don't
Lightning Storm.
think that's a bad idea. Yeah, Lightning Storm. That'll usually cover the same things Duster does.
Yeah.
I'd argue maybe Dark Hole or something isn't unheard of. That's yeah. I actually think Dark Hole is, in most instances, going to be better than Raigeki because it will be the same as Raigeki and can kill any stupid card they give you.
Yeah, like Ibli.
Which is...
what stupid cards are going around in the format right now?
Ibli, maybe. That's about it. That's basically the only thing.
What deck's playing
Probably Ibli. I don't know. Rescue Ace was playing it, but it's not really anymore.
That's right. Yeah, Rescue Ace was playing it.
Sprite can play it, but I don't even think Sprite is popular anymore. So, yeah, I definitely think that card has fallen out. And if you really, really care about Ibli, yeah, I agree. You can just put Lingering in your extra deck if Ibli's actually a concern. And this deck definitely has extra deck space.
And that makes Little Knight a lot better.
Yes, that too.
So I think
if you're really
in the same reason that Evenly Match sucks this format, Ibli probably sucks this format as well.
Yes, because if anybody's playing Lingering, you just lose instantly. Yeah. As far as other spells, I don't think there's really much of anything I can really think of that you would need. Like these seem to be like the two, like, I don't know, but like top end ones.
Yeah.
And I don't think you would put traps in that you would like set off of thrust going first. Like I just think you keep thrust in your side deck.
That's what I'm saying. Dude, I don't understand these people who play thrust going first. I just don't like to hope to set a D barrier.
Yeah,
I've never
I get it
understood
in Unchained, because setting a trap, you can just pop it and it actually is like sort of an extender.
I can see it
almost
in like
every other
earlier
deck.
too, where you have an archetypal trap or rescue ace maybe.
Yeah, well, I think if I hand trap my rescue ace opponent and he activated thrust and set contain, I would laugh. Like I would probably laugh, honestly. Like,
That's
you know,
bars.
take that as you will.
Yeah.
Take that as you will.
Because what are we going to do in this? Set salvation and hope
Yeah,
our opponent summons
exactly. Yeah, hope
Eldritch
Rainbow and
plus
hope
Lord
they
of the
can
Heavenly
summon
Prison.
Two, literally, right? Yeah. So I definitely don't love thrust going first in a deck like this. So I think this is probably sufficient. And again, I don't think evenly going second is great at the moment.
Yeah. That's another thing. What do you think of 2 thrusts? I've heard so much debate about 3 thrusts versus 2. I want to know your thoughts.
It's like, it's so like the level 1 in a vacuum thinking that I usually subscribe to is, if you're gonna put, I'm gonna call them garnets in your deck, like Feather Duster or Herald of the Abyss, to search off of thrust, then you definitely want to maximize the number of the search cards you're playing. However, Hogwarts Feather Duster and Herald of the Abyss are not garnets. They are the card you want in your hand. So you know, that sort of risk reward comes into the equation, where why would you put 2 Terror Top in your deck and 1 Takatomborg? You know, like if you're going to make your deck worse by putting in Takatomborg, logically you should maximize your chance of hitting the payoff, which is Terror Top. So you would put 3 Terror. That reference might even be too old for most people that haven't been playing this. That's crazy. That is old to me.
You know, it was crazy to me, people that didn't know who Jeff Leonard was. That was crazy to me, because I feel like he was very recent.
What is a more recent example of that type of card?
I remember you brought up
unfortunately
the Live Twins with Righty Driver and Lefty Driver when the Live Twins were first coming out. Does that apply here?
I don't think I remember what I said about Righty Driver and Lefty Driver. The Live Twins I would probably max out on because they summon each other, but
yeah,
there's if you don't know what Takatomborg are, just go read them and you'll understand what I'm saying. And then you'll understand why Terratop is at 1. I guess. But yeah, it's like
Driver and Gamma.
Oh yes, yeah. Like there's a reason you'd play 3 Gamma. Like there's a reason you wouldn't play 2 Gamma, you know, and only 1 Driver. You would play 3 Gamma because that's the cards you want to draw, and you're making a deck building concession of including the bad card.
Oh, and Tour Guide and Fiendish Rhino Warrior.
Yes, very good. Yeah, that one. That's more applicable right now. Yeah, is you would play 3 Tour Guide because but Hogwarts Feather Duster is the card. Like Thrust doesn't perform any additional function that the cards you're searching would perform, and you're not playing it for its toolbox. Like you're not like Feather Duster and Abyss might both come in the same matchup, but they also might not. You know, like you can reasonably put in Thrust and Feather Duster against Labyrinth and not put Herald in. Yeah. You know, and in that instance, Thrust, you're not playing 3 Thrust because it has an additional function than your Harvest Feather Duster. You're playing Thrust because you wanted to get Feather Duster. So you're essentially playing 3 to 4 copies of Feather Duster. But then if you also draw Feather Duster, Thrust can just get like Rainbow Bridge.
Yeah.
So I don't think Thrust quite falls into the category. I would only play 3 Thrust if you are building your entire deck around like fetching 5 or 6 different weird one-of spells. Then I would play as many thrusts as possible because you're playing some weird deck that needs access to these different toolbox cards, and that's why you're building your deck. And I would just play 3 thrusts because I don't know what you're doing at this point.
You're trying to search Raigeki, Darkhole, or Kaiju Slumber.
Literally, yes. In this instance, you could very easily just play 2 thrusts, and it would essentially is the fill-in for the third obvious Feather Dust, for second and third obvious Feather Duster with some conditionals, and then mitigates the risk of drawing multiple thrusts and they're once per turn and yada yada yada. The math on that is really weird. I don't want to go super deep into it, but I don't have a definitive opinion on.
That's a good point. Yeah, you do suggest 2 thrusts here then.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely you could do it. I don't think I definitively think 2 or 3 are better in this instance. But I would not fault, like, if you really need side deck space, especially if the side card you want to put in is another normal spell or normal trap, you can definitely cut a thrust for it.
Yeah,
and then
I mean, what about
in
just
these
the
matchups,
talent
you're
placing it?
Yeah, you're just essentially adding more of that card anyway. So it is like, that's kind of like the blessing and the curse of thrust, in that like you're essentially siding 3 copies of Herald of the Abyss and 3 copies of Harley's Feather Duster with only 4 side deck slots. If you play 2 thrusts, that so that's like it is reasonable.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on just playing a Talon then in the side deck to replace it? It's like the second Talon.
I think if I replaced a thrust in this side deck, it would have to probably be for a specific card for a specific matchup. I don't think I would replace it for another generic card.
Okay, so something like Secret Village of the Spellcasters. So we have Zombie World to stop Flu. We obviously just side out Necro Valley to put in Zombie World. And then we could play Secret Village of the Spellcasters with Lina or Witten as the spellcaster. But it's also super fragile because if they summon Fenrir, that just breaks the entire board and puts us under our own Secret Village.
Diabellstar as a spellcaster monster. Is a rough one.
That's rough. Yeah.
And some people are playing 3 of that card.
Yeah.
Not just 1. Rough. So that is a rough.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I can sign off on that just for that alone. Honestly, just because Diabellstar could reason, like, that card has a lot of different things it can search, not just the guy that summons level 1 fire. There are a lot of different decks that could just randomly summon a Diabellstar and set some weird card, and then just you die. Like that's just it just could happen. Like, it's
the toolbox is so
maybe
vast.
Not right now. But. I don't even hate Diabellstar. Like, that's something I also thought about, was playing it in like a Crystal Beast deck, because there's like a trap that it can set, and its effect. You can send a face-up card to the graveyard. Actually. Oh yeah, I went over this a lot. Yeah, and Crystal Beast is one of the things that I thought about, because you have like the guys floating in your back row that you can sometimes just like kind of send for free, just to get traps or whatever. But
you just send the Diabellstar and target face-up card negate its effects. But then recycling wouldn't happen with this deck because of Shifter and Necro Valley. Yes. So I feel like there's some
that is the problem there. If you if you're playing these like stun tools, then Diabellstar would not really fit the bill. It would be definitely, that would be a Secret Village version, is you would just play Diabellstar in your deck. Right?
Yeah,
like that would true. Be if you want to play is you like a different version of this with Secret Village instead of Necro Valley, and then Diabellstar's on your field as your spellcaster, and then if they clear the Diabellstar, guess what? It comes back. And then they have to clear it again.
Yeah.
So your Secret Village will be up more often. But yeah, probably outside the scope of what this deck wants to do right now, especially when, like, that would be that would be, in my opinion, an idea to consider when the current Rescue Ace Diabellstar deck is not popular, right? That would be like that would be like, okay, Diabellstar has like a rotated out of like the popular meta. Now you can do something different with Diabellstar, and people aren't playing the same cards that would counter it.
Yeah, that's a good point. we'll just get this out of the way. Shifter's the most
Mhm.
impactful hand trap of the format. Like, we're main decking that, right? Because this deck, we either
Sure.
main deck it or we side deck it. I think this format is a main deck Shifter format.
Yeah. So something that I think is kind of funny is the first place Rescue Ace deck from Indie. I believe Steven Santoli, who recently qualified for this year's Worlds and top 8 Worlds, and won a remote YCS right before the WCQ. So he's
that's
definitely had a
insane.
super nice. Yeah, he's had a super nice run recently. He sided D-Shifter in Rescue Ace, and I saw some people online saying like, look, he won and he was siding D-Shifter, like D-Shifter isn't even good against Rescue Ace, like something. I watched his deck profile and he put D-Shifter on the table and he said, I'm not playing this in the future. I was really scared of Tier, and when I played against Tier, I decided not even to put it in my deck. It was a mistake to side this. And he had said like it actually like hurts your deck probably too much.
Yeah.
So I definitely think there are gonna be some people that will just look at the picture of his deck list and come to incorrect conclusions.
That always
Shifter
happens.
Isn't good. Yeah, that Shifter isn't good against Rescue Ace. Look, the Rescue Ace is even siding it now. Look. No, that is simply not true.
Yeah.
It's
always good to get context, people.
Yeah. So like that is simply not true. It is good against Rescue Ace. And even the man who played it and won with it said, I probably wouldn't play this again. I think it was a mistake to play this. It was a last minute addition because I was really afraid of the Tier matchup. And then I just decided to play my deck and beat them anyway.
Yeah.
Which is, that's what that is. So
real quick,
Mhm.
if you want to refresh your deck page, I've updated the deck. I was trying to figure out what to put in that last slot for the side deck.
Okay.
Another thought I have is like, what if we cut the third droplet and just play a 2 of something? But does that give you an aneurysm?
You could even just side the Cowboy. Honestly.
Oh, true.
That's
yes, let's do that.
That's definitely
I totally forgot.
That's definitely something that can be done. Yeah.
Let's side the Cowboy. I love that.
Yeah. That can slot in there reasonably well if that's still something that's a concern.
All right. I'm satisfied with this deck. This is sweet. Do you want to just spend like the next 10 minutes going over Master Duel a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I mean, you linked me to some Master Duel metagame article, which I believe was like the same. I've definitely used his website for Duel Links before, but
DK
I also just
made
know what
a
these
whole
decks
website
are.
for Master Duel now.
Yeah.
Sweet.
But from your experience of playing, I assume you also play Crystal Beast on Master Duel. I do know all the cards are there. Like I have them on Master Duel. I played it a little bit, but I don't play Master Duel frequently enough to know what like the popular decks are at like higher ranks. I honestly just play Symphonic Warriors on Master Duel.
Really?
that's yeah. But
the Crystal Beast deck you have, that's probably Overdrive, right? Because you just love Rainbow Dragon.
Yes, I do. That is the one I have built. Yes,
Yeah.
I played it for there was like a festival when like just a bunch of like the modern cards were banned, and I just made an Overdrive deck that I played.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
I don't remember
Conclave
what
Control
festival
is
it was.
great
It was a
because
while ago.
you cut down on the Bricky Beast to play non-engine, and that's great for a consistent deck. But you do miss out on summoning Rainbow Dragon, and that's huge.
Yes, which yeah,
That's huge for the appeal of Crystal Beast.
Okay.
But,
so as far as like this is concerned, I mean like
I can show you my Master Duel deck.
yes, that is. I would love to see that real quick because I'm just considering like you can only use one Prosperity, which is fine. Like that's not the end of the world. And like Maxi is allowed in your deck, which I guess doesn't hurt this deck that much because this deck summons, no more than 2 times. Really.
Exactly, yeah.
And this deck was already only playing 1 Planet and 2 Fenrir, which is, funnily enough, the the legal copies.
Alright, this is the current Master Duel deck.
Okay. Yeah, this is pretty much what I would have expected, I guess, with the space I forgot Goods was also limited Master Duel, so you have to make a little bit of a concession there.
We have to play the third
instead of 2 shifter, you're just playing 3 maxi, which makes sense, and then you're filling in the other spots you lost with Book of Moon, which is definitely a really good card in a, presumably Kashtira dominated metagame, or Pearly as well. Pearly and Kashtira are the two most played decks, so definitely makes sense. Yeah.
The other big thing,
and there's no side deck, so
yeah. Well, until I make Top Cut, because I'm competing in the MCS this weekend. So it was
okay.
This weekend was a toss-up for me between playing in a TCG regional or Master Duel MCS, and I decided at the end of the day to play the MCS because I just have a better experience of being able to play Crystal Beasts on like the feature match, and you already know during the Duel Academy ones like that. Those were a blast when we'd have like the feature match, and that was just the best.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't get that with the regional, so I think I'd have a better time playing the Master Duel one. Even though the format, I think, in the TCG favors Crystal Beast more because you have stuff like Unchained, Hurleman, Chimera, whereas in this version you have Kashtira and Pearly are the best decks, and Kashtira is a difficult matchup because it's the Fenrir's insane against this deck. Like a Rise Heart, we don't care too much, but Fenrir's insane, and Kashtira is the best deck at facilitating Fenrir turn after turn.
Yeah. That is very reasonable. So as far, and like, there's no SP yet, so I see the extra, and you did mention you played the rank 8 stuff on Master Duel, and there it is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what other changes.
That's just the Hope Harbinger, because I don't have the URs yet for it. I mean, I think I'm going to buy the Hope Harbinger, but it's just there because Dragluvion just does any dragon number monster.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I honestly don't know what I mean, this looks like pretty much the logical progression of like Shifter is at 2, so you want to play, and you can play Maxines. Oh, also Shifter isn't good against Kashtira, so
yeah,
so you don't want to just main it. Yeah, that's the other one. Yeah, you don't want to just main it because. But you main Shifter and they go summon Unicorn, you go, oh, I look like a fool. Like,
exactly.
I don't even. Okay, makes
the biggest
sense.
thing
That's
that I had a question on is like, man, I don't know how much I like Talents. It's very hit or miss, like as a main deck card, especially playing 2 of it or playing 1. I want to know your thoughts on playing like a card like Talents in the main deck or like a mid-range slow deck like this.
So I don't think Talents is super great in a more I am not even sure I would classify this deck as a modern mid-range deck. I would probably even go as far as say this is Vanquish Soul is probably the poster child of like the modern mid-range of like it very obviously isn't combo, and it doesn't lock your opponent out of the game, but it just recurs its resources so well and does a lot of like sort of point and click interaction. This deck I would probably say is closer, it's a very slow, like grindy control deck, so I don't think Talents is a card, because like Talents is usually a pretty big tempo card.
Exactly.
Where
that's what
you're comboing, you get hand trapped, you look at their hand, you get rid of their last thing of interaction, and now your combo will resolve completely. You are breaking through their board, and then you take their monster, and then you use that to break their board, and then you push for huge advantage. And like, that's not really what these decks are doing. Or this deck is doing. Like, you're not really getting, and like drawing 2 is like, obviously drawing 2 cards is always good, but
that was
it's
the biggest.
Not.
I pretty much just wanted a card that wasn't called by the grave, because I mean, obviously this deck doesn't care about Maxi. It mostly cares about Ash. A well-timed Ash can stop the entire turn of this deck, like Ash on Zenith or Salvation or Bond if I don't have any other Crystal Beasts. So I wanted a card that punished my opponent for using Ash, but also like I don't care about Maxi, so called by. I feel like Talent was the bigger punish rather than called by. being able to draw 2 cards. And it's also nice if my opponent Bestials my Ruby, because you can't call by that. But in that regard, do you still think Talents isn't the best card in this deck?
Because a lot of the time, so I'm not to say that called by is better, but in that function, right, where like Ash on the Crystal Beast Rainbow Dragon can turn off a lot of your deck because of, you don't get access to the Rainbow Dragon, so you can't use Awakening, and you're cut off a lot of stuff. Call by the Grave is probably more valuable in that slot because it will make sure that Ash cannot just turn off all of your advantage.
Yeah.
However, I'm not even sure that application is like applicable enough to warrant the slots for that card, to the point that like maybe that slot could even just be another defensive card. Like, I don't hate playing Ash Blossom yourself in a slot like
or
that,
Imperm,
but like I or even like I don't hate that slot turning into, I mean, Book of Moon's already there, but I don't hate that slot turning into something like Ash, Imperm. I mean, Chalice would probably just be worse than Imperm at this point, but I think the most logical cards in that slot would be Talents is definitely fine. I think if your application is you want something that can help you offset the loss of advantage from getting Ash. Like, I don't think this deck is ever looking at your opponent's hand. I truly don't think that's ever happening in this deck. Just because you don't really get any benefit.
The 2 random draws is also like pretty bad with how many bricks this deck has. Like with Zenith being a brick, Salvation, Rainbow Dragon.
Yeah, it is really funny that I think that's probably better suited as a defense. I mean, if you remove tactics, I think a defensive card is one of the only other things I put in that slot. Like maybe Ash, which I don't hate Ash even in that
I don't
slot.
like
I think
it
Ash is always sort of like
on,
mid-rangey.
Opposing triple tactics cards.
Sure, that's fair. That is fair.
Imperm is nice
because that is
one of the things with Talents was it's able to out-arise too, but Imperm also kind of does that.
Yes, Imperm does do that. Yeah, so that is definitely if you are very concerned about the Talents cards, which I did forget, Thrust did just get added to Master Duel, so now there's even more talent cards going around. That if you're not playing a huge saturation of hand traps, the other option is play Few to None, which Maxi is fine enough. It can be played in the draw phase to play around Talents, and then obviously doesn't put a monster on your field, so Thrust doesn't get that much value even if they do have Thrust. So I can definitely see that being a consideration to play Imperm instead. Yeah, instead of Ash in that slot. I don't know how often you run out of back row spaces in this deck. I don't think you probably don't with only one Conclave. Like I doubt there are as many situations as there were before where you literally could not set your Imperm. Right?
Yeah,
There's
unless you Golden Rule turn 1 and like you have that's the thing, Golden Rule stays in the spell trap zone. That part kind of sucks.
Oh, that is
being
funny.
equipped. But that's the other concern. You're absolutely right with Imperm, where you don't have enough back row space to be able to set it, but I think it is mitigated nowadays. Having to set, you want to have you ideally have like Heart plus 1 Crystal Beast in the back row plus Miracle plus you have like 2 spots left, so you could do a book or an Imperm, or that's the spot where you crystallize the beast that you destroy off Miracle.
Yeah, so I can definitely see Imperm being a fine
Let's do it.
card in that slot as well.
I like Imperm. I'm in. Talent has been such like a hit or miss card for me. Like it's so weird.
Yeah, I truly just don't think this is quite the type of deck where it like really, especially because like, unless I don't know the exact tournament structure, but in general in Master Duel there's no side decking, so it's not even like a card that having 1 in your main deck or 1 on your side deck gives you more access to it later with Thrust or anything like that.
Exactly.
It's just gonna be like a weird 2 of that's just kind of there.
Yeah. In Top Cut, they're doing side decks. So it's best of 1 for the like 8 rounds of Swiss, and then top cut, top 16. I was so I'll work on my side deck another time. It'll probably just be like looking like a similar one that we did in the TCG. So I'm glad we did that. But I'm also thinking of just playing Nemesis Corridor going first.
Oh, sure, and like
and Colossus.
Sure, yeah, and Colossus.
But
that's not bad, yeah.
It probably isn't a good idea in cash format.
Oh, sure.
Or
yeah,
like
someone
better.
attack, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to search a lot. They don't
That's
have that
true.
many guys.
Yeah. They do
That
have to search
probably
a
isn't
lot.
even bad. Like, Colossus with counter trap is probably game, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, you're not
Like,
wrong. You're kind of talking me back into it.
It's probably game.
Oh,
So,
I'll look into it. We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time, Mr. Levine. This has been super helpful because not a whole lot of minds are like yours.
Working
where
on Crystal Beast.
You're competitive.
Right.
You're a very decorated player, but you also know how to play Crystal Beast. Like,
Yes.
so I really appreciate you being in a unique position to be able to help me in this way.
Absolutely. Good luck on your tournament. Hope it works out.
Appreciate it, and I wish you the best in YCS Richmond as well.
Okay. I'm actually not playing Richmond, crazily enough.
Okay.
I'm actually working one of the vending booths.
Oh, all right. So you're going there, but you're not competing.
Yes.
There we go. Is that fun working the vendor booth?
I've only done it once before. Well, I've done it at a couple regionals, but I've only done it at a YCS once before. It's a change of pace. Like I mentioned, earlier, just to you that like Indy was really fun. I liked the trip a lot, but like a lot of my matches, I just didn't like. I got into not like arguments with some of my opponents, but I just didn't have the best time with interacting with my opponents. Some of them were like not very pleasant, and I was like maybe I'll take a little bit of a step back. And maybe, and honestly, if it was a bunch of, my opponents not being happy with when they played me, maybe it was me. Like, maybe it was something I did. So maybe I need to, take a step back and just, chill out for a little bit and not worry about the event for once. Mm-hmm. And just enjoy the trip and enjoy the people and the surroundings. So taking a little bit of a break, but I am almost certainly gonna, I'm not quitting. That's not my intention. I'm just gonna take a bit of a breather.
Yeah, I see you. Well, I wish you the best regardless. You're gonna have a great time.
Yes.
And
appreciate it.
I'll catch you next time.
Yep.
Hey Ryan, peace.
Yep.
What an awesome guy. We really learned a lot today, didn't we?